Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hobby Homestead. I have been sick for so long now with some virus that my kids gave me. It's been almost 2 months. I've been like coughing on and off, and it's gotten to the point where I am forced to rest because I'm just not getting better. And despite the fact that I need to rest, I have 1 hour before I have to go pick up my kids from school and daycare. And a lot of these seedlings that are still inside my house really need to be dealt with. They have just been in tiny little pots, struggling away. Basil, I mean, it's okay, but the problem is when the plants start to get big in these tiny pots, you have to water them all the time, and I'm just not on top of it right now. So I really have to do some potting up, and this is just one of many pre-last frost gardening tasks that has to get done. When we get to this time of year where it's like 2 weeks until our last frost date, which is what it is right now, it's really hard to focus on the inside seed starts. All these plant babies here, and this is not all of them. There's a bunch still inside my house. These are the ones I brought out to organize. I don't want to deal with inside stuff. I want to be outside all the time. This is why I need a greenhouse, so I can keep these things outside. Anyway, it is what it is. I have to deal with them. I have to pot them up. And there's a lot of other fun spring garden prep tasks that I want to be doing. I will do, but oh my god, it is too windy out here for these plant babies. I better get potting up. But I will just let you know that this video is going to be a little bit of potting up and a little bit of all the other things that you can do in the garden before your last frost gets here. There are things that you can be direct sowing in the garden now. There's plants that you could be planting out already if you have cold hardy plants. You could be working on trellises, bringing in fresh compost or fresh soil if you have some new garden beds to fill up like I do. There's just tons. There's tons to be done. And I have to rein myself in and do what needs to be done, which is deal with these seedlings. I don't even really know where to start, to be honest. Well, maybe with these tomatoes. This one lost all its lower leaves because I got so stressed out because I was not watering it. I really like potting up tomato seedlings in these pots that are meant for tree seedlings. They're really tall and really narrow. And the only reason I'm not right now is because they take up so much soil. And at this point, I only have another 2 weeks probably before I can plant these out. So, oh right, I'm putting them here. I don't want to be using way more soil than I actually need to be using. Check out the cucamelons though. They're doing fine. Guess they don't mind my neglect as much. I'm having a lot of do as I say, not as I do moments this spring. My tomatoes were looking super rough. And with half of them, I knew it was from underwatering. So they had a root structure. They were in some cases root bound, and the soil was just like dusty dry inside the pots. Even though I try to keep on top of watering them almost every day, when they're in tiny pots and they get so big like that, it's just impossible to keep them well enough hydrated, which is why I went ahead and potted up. But then in some of them, I noticed that they had almost no root structure, which is really weird. Same soil, so it's not a matter of the soil mix I was using. And then I remembered that I have fungus gnats. And I was using the mosquito dunks for a while, where you put mosquito dunks into a watering can, let them release into the water, and then water the top of your soil with that. I have dirt on my face now. And the bacteria that is in the mosquito dunks will eat the fungus gnat larvae, and that was working fairly well. I had barely any on my sticky traps, and then I neglected them, and it's been about a month since I have done anything at all to try to control the fungus gnats. I have not sprayed insecticidal soap. I have not used mosquito dunks. I haven't even been focusing on bottom watering, because when I bring things outside to hard them off, I just spray them with the hose. Like, literally all of the advice I give, I have not been following in this past month, because I'm going to blame being sick and feeling under the weather. But really, it's just that I, as my mom says, I'm not very finicky. I just sort of do things, let things be, you know, it will be what it will be. And that's definitely how I treated my seedlings this April. So yeah, have a look at all those fungus gnats. Both sides, it's disgusting. And I have several traps that are this full. Anyway, getting you back to my tomatoes. Fungus gnats, their larvae will eat the root systems of young plants. And so I'm betting that's what's happened to the half of my plants that look like garbage. So here's another example. This is golden Pascal celery, sown on the same day, in the same soil, living right next to each other. I think fungus gnats, their larvae just did better in this pot than in this one. That's my guess. I have no idea why that would be, but that is the only thing that I can think of. The fungus gnats must have eaten the roots in here, not in here. I don't know. A lot of my plants have been like this spring, where half of them sown on the same day, in the same soil, under the same conditions, half of them look great and half of them look like death. It's super weird. So anyway, with all things nature, there are a million possibilities, and we can never be fully in control, and we just have to roll with the punches and start extras. You may have noticed I'm in a different outfit. This video is going to take a couple days to film because I am just not feeling at my best. And so what would have been a day's worth of garden tasks, I'm spreading out over a few days. Today, after laying in bed for literally 4 hours this morning, which is a big deal for me, I'm going to mulch my strawberries. There. I like using chopped straw because it's really easy to lay. This is from my local home hardware. And it is not certified, but like their branding is all about, we ensure that we're pesticide, herbicide free. So whatever, I'll use it. You know, you can also use like pine shavings, animal bedding, that kind of thing, which can also be pretty affordable. It's good to mulch your strawberries, and I did a whole video on just strawberry care that I'll link in the description. But mulching essentially helps keep pathogens in the soil and keeps them from bouncing up onto your fruit. So if you have a heavy rain, those water droplets splash into the soil and can bounce stuff up onto your berries. So it just protects them that way. It can also just insulate your soil and retain moisture. And with strawberries, you want to retain moisture in the soil, but not like around the plants themselves, not around the leaves or the crowns. So I choose to not mulch my strawberries with compost, which I do in other beds. Instead, I use something light and fluffy with good drainage, like straw. The ideal time to add fresh mulch to your strawberries is early spring, but not too early, because if there's a lot of this reflective material on the surface of your soil, it'll actually reflect the sun's heat, and that means that the soil will thaw slower in the spring if you've mulched it too early, or if there's a heavy layer on from the previous fall or winter. And so some strawberry farmers I know will actually remove the mulch that they used to help protect their berries over winter, or their plants over winter. They'll remove that early in the spring just to help the soil warm faster, and then you put on a fresh layer of mulch to protect the berries. It doesn't have to be that much work for the home grower. I find that the chopped straw decomposes. It just adds to the soil. Just adds to the soil over time, and then you just have to add fresh in the spring. I did a video recently, actually earlier this week, on the earliest things that I'm harvesting from my garden, and I didn't mention these Emiko Chinese cabbage. They are not quite ready yet because we had a really unusually cold spring. Well, maybe a usually cold spring, but the last couple of years I was harvesting big, like full Chinese cabbage heads from Emiko Chinese cabbage at the very beginning of April. So it grew throughout March really fast. It thrives in cold temperatures. I planted out, this stuff came outside in mid-March, like as soon as the snow was off this ground. The soil was still frozen partway down. I did put a plastic row cover on it to sort of pre-warm it, but I at the same time stuck in Emiko Chinese cabbage seedlings, and they don't even care. They're just a really, really hardy, resilient plant. And I use them to make kimchi. And another cool thing I wanted to show you is this pea. This is an albino pea. I don't know how it's growing, how it's going to continue to grow, but that is really cool. This is the plant from the same pack of seeds, but yeah. And I can't even tell you what kind of seeds these were anymore because I forget. The other thing I really want to get done before our last frost date arrives is plant some more cold hardy herbs and other plants that have to get into the ground. And thyme is a good one. Oregano is another one. I've almost killed this oregano, but it's still alive and it's time to plant it out in the garden. Just keeping things alive in my house in the spring is hard for me because I'm always outside and all I care about are the outside plants. I'm not going to put a lot of herbs in here. This is only an 18-inch wide bed, and I plan to grow cherry tomatoes in here as well, just heavily trellised up here. I'm going to put maybe 3 herbs, maybe 4, and just the ones that I most commonly run out and grab while I'm cooking. So for us, that's usually parsley, thyme, oregano, and basil. But the basil is going to come out here a little bit later because it is not cold hardy. And this video is about the things that I need to be doing now before our last frost date. So I bought this thyme plant. I have 2 thyme plants in my garden already, but I can't seem to get enough thyme. And you can propagate thyme from cuttings, and you can also grow it from seed. It just takes a long time. But sometimes I just give in to the impulse when I am in the store and I see cheap little herb plants that look really healthy and give me a leg up on the season. Thyme is also a perennial, so it'll come back again and again and get bigger and better. It also can get pretty big and woody, like it can get a nice thick trunk on it. And if you don't want that, if you want lots of nice succulent little leaves, then you need to keep using it. Keep trimming it back, and then you'll always have lots of nice young growth. Right, let's see if we can revive this. Part of me wonders if I'd be better just to go and take a cutting or even just a division from my other oregano patch that's doing fine. But I'm not ready to kill this plant completely. I think it has some potential for life left in it. Yeah, there's still living roots in there. This parsley I actually planted a couple of days ago, and it was self-seeded elsewhere in my garden. If you grow parsley and it flowers, then you will most likely get a lifetime supply every year thereafter of self-seeded parsley. My idea with this garden space here is to have some perennial herbs that are going to be green early and stay looking nice all season long, right until even after the first frost in the fall. And that's because this is our deck. You know, we leave our house walking down here. We're going to have our outdoor dining area just behind you. And it'll be nice to have something green, something fresh, something culinary right here, ready to grab all growing season, like from the earliest in the spring to the latest in the fall. And the main crop that I'm putting in here is cherry tomatoes, and that's not the case for cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are not going to start looking like much until June, so I want to have something that comes on earlier and also lives past the first frost. Another thing that I have been really dying to do is to plant my American groundnuts, also called hopnus, or their Latin name is Apios americana. This is an awesome native perennial. It's in the legume family, so it does grow little beans and these beautiful like pea plant reminiscent flowers, but in little clusters. And the really yummy part is the tubers. You can't eat the little beans, but the tubers are awesome. I ate my first ones last year, even though I only had them growing in pots up until now. And now we have these nice planters where I'm going to put all of my Apios americanas. They vine, so we trellis them up and they make this nice like flowery screen blocking in most of our deck space. Here they are. Oh, there's some sprouting. All right, it is time to get these planted. This is just a tiny one of the little tubers and a little sprout coming at the top. Now I'm going to sow some carrot seedlings, and I'm just pre-watering the soil, because if you sow delicate little carrot seedlings and then you try to water them in, it's going to wash away all those little seeds. Carrots are a great one to succession sow, and they can tolerate being sown pretty early in the season. So I sowed my first round of carrot seeds in I think it was the very beginning of April, and I had them under a plastic row cover, and it took them a while to germinate. Actually, you know what? I think it was the end of March, and they're only now getting their first true leaves, so it took weeks for them to germinate and start to grow. Now that we are only 2 weeks away from our last frost date, the weather is more consistently like in the teens in Celsius, and so carrots are going to germinate really well in this kind of weather. And I like to sow them a good solid row of them at least every month. Now I have some radishes here. Actually, I'm going to have to pick those because I use a board method where I lay a board down on top of my seeds. These are just radishes that like self-sowed. I had a radish that went to seed here. So it's not like I lost any seed that I paid for by pulling those up. You can just sow carrot seeds on the surface of the soil. I just like to give them a tiny bit of coverage. I like scuff them in. So just like a super shallow trench. And if you want, you can even do like 2 rows beside each other, or just scuff them into a row as wide as you want. Do you know what I mean by scuff? Like that. Like you're gently scratching a dog's chin. That's such a weird analogy. I don't even have a dog. In order to save myself a lot of effort in thinning and a lot of wasted seed, I like to do my best to space these out evenly. Carrots can be really hard to space out because the seeds are so tiny. You can get pelleted seeds, which are just easier to work with, but I just try to put a couple spaced out at the distance I'd want carrots to be apart, which is a few inches. And then, totally optional, but you can kind of just scuff them in. Just work the soil very loosely around them with your fingertips, and that ensures that they don't go too deep, but they're also not just exposed to the air. Just like a very gentle covering of soil. Okay, and then the final trick is the boards. I want the board to have really good contact with the soil, and it prevents the seeds from drying out. Now we're going to come back and check on these at least once a week, especially as we're entering weather that is like ideal conditions for carrots to germinate. In colder weather, it takes a month for them to germinate, so you can check every week without worrying too much, but you really want to catch them right when they start to emerge out of the soil, and that is when you take the board off and let them have sun. These are our carrots that were sown in March. Still pretty tiny, it takes them a while. And I sow my carrots really close to a first crop of radishes. These are radishes coming in. The radishes fill in this otherwise empty space because carrots take so long. Radishes are super quick, so I sow the seeds at the same time, and then I pull the radishes long before they start to get in the way of the carrots, but it takes advantage of this otherwise empty space. Also, check out the difference between last year's overwintered spinach and this year's. This year's is very tiny in comparison. All right, that's pretty much all I have energy for today, and I've already stretched this video out over the course of several days. So I think I'm going to call it now and end it, but there are a couple of other things that you can be doing if you are anxiously awaiting your last frost date. And one is weeding, which is something that most people don't really love doing, but it only gets harder as you get busier in the garden. And so now is a great time. Most weeds will start to grow well before your last frost date. The weeds are smaller when you get them now. Their root systems are smaller. They're easier to pull. So you can do weeding. If you're growing seeds inside, then now is a good time to start hardening them off. It usually takes at least a week to harden plants off, unless you have like 3 days straight of beautiful, rainy, drizzly, overcast weather, then maybe you could speed up your process. But give yourself at least a week to harden off your warm weather crops, so you can start that anytime now or very soon. That's really all I have on my list right now. But if I think of anything else that's a good before your last frost date garden task, I'll add it in the video description down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll come and grow with us.